Hello, welcome back to another pen talk. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for following along, and as I weave my way through the world of fountain pens. This is a video that I've not done. I've done kind of like little ones here and there, pens that broke and things of that nature, but these are pens I was disappointed with, frustrated with. And I'm starting with this pen, and I have it disassembled because I got to a point where I didn't want ink in it anymore, so I took it apart. You may recognize it as a PenBBS 355 in Galaxy finish, a beautiful pen. Ergonomically, a very nice design pen, but this resin is opaque, so filling it with this draw filler, you know, I had a lot of ink in it, but the challenge came in is this, you know, would dry out, and I would unscrew the blind cap to let ink flow into the feed, but it never would write, and I'd have to wet the nib, and I would go through a whole series of things, and this is after letting it set, you know, a couple days to a week or a few weeks. And there's very few pens I've ever had that have been this frustrating to work with. And I have other 355s which we'll look at, which you uncap and you write. So that's my experience. This wrench works perfectly, 19/64 to fit here. When you unscrew the blind cap and give you room, you just unscrew it, and they come apart very easily. This and the 456 are certainly very easy to take apart. So what's my theory on why this pen was so frustrating to write with? My theory is that when you have the blind cap closed, which is how I stored the pen, and I stored it nib up, regardless of how tight these caps fit, you're going to get some ink evaporation out of the nib and feed. And because you have the nib and feed closed off from the ink reservoir, which is sitting in the barrel, it dries pretty hard. So in other pens that don't have a shutoff valve like this one does, there's always fresh ink flowing in there, so even though ink evaporates, it's being replaced by wet ink. So when you do eventually open up the flow, it's not going to flow because it's blocked by dried ink. That's my theory. I could replace the nib and feed and replace, you know, I could do a whole bunch of things to this pen to try to get it to write. But I have a number of 355s, I have a number of 456s, I like those, and they write consistently, so therefore this one is now going to be, silicone greased up, because I always do that when I take them apart, and put into my drawer of PenBBS pens. The other thing I think is not as good with the design is this ring that comes off when you take off and unscrew that blind cap, so you got to be careful not to lose that. But this is just a beautiful finish. I love Galaxy. I have a number of pens in Galaxy, so I don't need this one to be in my daily writing to experience the joys and fun of using that finish. Well, I have this 355 apart. You know, here's that piece which has threads for the blind cap and threads for the barrel. As you can see, it really just slides there. There's no real need for that like there is in the vac-filler, where that rod has to go through that section very tightly and it has to be airtight, and that's why this is metal on the 456 and plastic on the 355. You can see that little ridge there which snaps into this plastic piece, and that's when you know that you have the piston secure at the top. And then, of course, to get it out, it takes some effort, but that's how it works. So I'm going to reassemble it. I've silicone greased this piston here. I also put just a little bit of grease on this bottom plug that goes into the section. On closer examination of this feed, that channel looks to be pretty clogged, and that could definitely explain the issue of the pen not writing consistently and requiring a lot of effort to write at all. That channel I've opened up in other pens, so it's something I'll do before I reassemble the pen. I'm still not going to be encouraged to write with it, but at least I may have found the cause. But the fact that that got clogged up in the first place has me concerned, and that's why I think of that ink evaporation is causing that when you have the blind cap down and restricting the flow to the feed. So here we have comparing this top feed, which is from the 355, and this bottom feed, which is like a brand new feed in my parts kit. You can see there's a lot of ink there. I mean, this I flushed, I soaked, but I didn't take any sharp thing to clean out that channel. So if I reassemble this pen, I think I'll use the new feed, and I'm going to open up that channel a little bit just to ensure that maybe we can avoid those times when the pen doesn't write. We're going to explore the PenBBS feed a little bit, since I felt it was the reason for that 355 Galaxy to not write like it should or consistently. So I have these shims, and this is the largest one that I feel comfortable putting into that slit. And I just wanted to show how that slit is very thin, but it's also fairly deep. You can see how far that feeler is in there, and that's a tight fit, so I'm very comfortable with that. My next one is 0.13 millimeters, and that doesn't fit. There's also a channel in there with, this is what goes up through that nib assembly, and eventually ink touches that. So that's how the channel where the ink flows in eventually to the nib. So now that I feel that's cleaned out, and this is something I may do on a regular basis now that I've explored a little bit more, when I have trouble with flow on my PenBBS pens, I may take that out and clean it out. You may use a brass shim or some other nice thin piece of metal. A knife or a scalpel wouldn't work because that's just going to make it broad, and then you may not be able to get down to the bottom like you can with this piece of thin steel. Here are my other vac and draw fillers from PenBBS that I have inked up now. And they're in order of writing reliability. This is my second 355 that I got a little bit less than a year ago, so in January of 2019. This is that phenomenal one in vermouth with the matte gold trim, which I just fell in love with. Here's a 456 in Dawn. This is also a 456 here. Here's a 456 in clear, which I've done a lot of work on. There's a video I showed that where I took apart the whole pen, and now it's become fairly reliable. And at the top here is their least expensive vac filler, the 268, which after this video is going to be emptied and retired. It's just not a pen that I'm happy with on a few levels, but I think as an inexpensive vac filler in a small size, it fits the bill. So all these have different nibs in, so we're going to do a little bit of writing examples just to show you how these write relative to the 355 Galaxy, which I had to unink, and will probably do a lot more work before I re-ink it and put it back in service. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't show my other 456 and 355 models. I did go a little bit nuts on the 456, but such is life. So I'm putting these in numerical order. So this is a Summer, that nice blue ribbon color in a pearlescence base. And then we'll follow it up with Billows, which is the 44, and this is Billows Transparent. So they made a number of 456s. Most of them are all the same color, but then they made some with a transparent barrel. And of course, he's instantly recognizable as 54 Smog. And this is the one I call Infinity Clear, but it has this matte gold trim on it. This pen I got from a reseller, not a reseller, but a seller on Etsy that kind of puts together pens, and this was about the same price as a regular 456, plus I got some extra nibs, I got some extra feeds, etc., so that was really nice. And then we're followed up with one that a lot of people got excited about, which is Dawn. To me, Dawn, Autumn, Sunset. There's a whole bunch of them that are very similar in the resin. Has a red, orange, green combination of colors in different amounts. So this has a lot more red in it, at least this version of it does. And then we followed up with another one which has been quite nice, is called Symphony, which is in that same vein that you have different color of stripes in here. And to me, if you want to use this pen, you need to have somewhat of a clear barrel so you can actually see the ink level. Then we have Sea of Ice, kind of a cracked ice version. And then we have Midsummer's Night. This is the one that glows in the dark. It was my first glow-in-the-dark one. I wasn't super impressed with it on any level. And here's two 355s that I didn't show. Again, a smog, because I do like the smog resin. And of course, Amber is a Cat, which has some transparency to it, so it really works as a 355. And this is some of my 120 PenBBS pens. So the 355 Snowflake has a unique nib. It's branded 2019. It has those snowflakes on it, kind of a holiday decoration. And the rest of the pen has a similar decoration on it. This pen hasn't had substantial use. It's traveled with me a few times, but the snowflakes seem to be holding up well. And I would say that this nib from that tipping material looks like the medium nib, and it kind of writes like it too. I enjoy the way that it writes. So this is a wet writer. I haven't loosened up the blind cap, and this will write for a while, which is what you would expect until that feed runs out. So you can leave this set for a couple weeks, a month or so, uncap it, and it will write first time. Going on to the vermouth one, but I just wanted to show you that none of these pens have any leakage. There's a little drop of ink, but that's to be expected. These pens have been in use for a long time, and you'll get a little bit of ink like that, but certainly they stay relatively clean. This is that PenBBS standard fine. It's the two-tone one, which I think is a little bit of an upscale nib, and maybe they do a little bit more QC on it. I don't know, but most of these write fairly well, but I've had a few of these be dry on me. This one didn't require any work and wrote well, and I've been using it ever since I inked it up. The ink in here is Waterman's Serenity. I put it in because I wanted a ink that I wouldn't question the ink in it. My spelling is terrible. This is a gold trim fine nib. And this also writes first time every time. It's been very consistent since day one. And again, the blind cap is not removed. And like the 355 Snowflake, it's a fairly wet writer. So this I enjoy. It's not quite as smooth, but there's not a significant difference between this Snowflake medium nib and this fine nib. And I just like it. And the pen fits well in the hand. The 355 is a slightly larger section, but I like the weighting, the metal, the look. So this would be my pen of the year, except for the drying out issues. This has that rounded fine nib, which just seems to have disappeared now. So they have the extra fine, the normal fine, which is that upturn, This just has normal tipping on it, no upturn, but I like this nib. I like it like I like the medium nib. And this has diamine, dark purple. And again, it's a wet writer like the other ones. And this one starts up all the time again, blind cap in place. It's not as a pen that I've written with a lot. That ink inside of that Dawn finish really takes it to another new level. So this is a pen with another different style nib in it. This is the 6mm stub from Nemosine. I got a bunch of these. Nemosine's gone out of business. They were selling them at about half price. I did a lot of work. This wasn't my favorite nib when I first put it in here. And this is the 456-16. And this is the glass model. I think you can see how wet this nib is now. And it has Nemosine Alpha Centauri ink in it. I think this one here has Mulberry Noir. I got a couple of these dark purples that I've enjoyed. So, I mean, I can live with this nib the way it is now. But like I said, it was a little scratchy, catchy on the paper, but I used my diamond nail file to do some grinding on it, and then various smoother and smoother grades on my nail file till finally it felt good on paper, or relatively good. So the 268 has that standard fine nib with a little upturn to it. So this is the 268-16 in glass with the standard fine nib. And this is a little skippy, as you can see. It certainly doesn't write as wet as those other ones did. It has Edelstein Aquamarine in it. In case we didn't say, the vermouth one up here had Edelstein Olivine in it. So overall, like I said, I'm not happy with this pen, the size and the weight. And this type of writing is what I got a lot on the 355, except it would skip and not write for periods of time, where this doesn't quite do that. But it's not a nib I'm very happy with, so we'll clean this out, dump, as you can see, there's not much ink left in here, dump it into the bottle and take it from there. So that's the end of my review of these pens, and hopefully you've gotten a little bit of an idea for them. And it's not that I would say I don't recommend them. I certainly would recommend them, especially the 456, but just keep in mind that they'll be a little finicky. On occasion, when I've used these as everyday carries, I forget to open up the blind cap, it runs out of ink, and then it takes a while for it to start up again. And if you're in a situation where you need to take minute-by-minute notes, it kind of puts you in a bad situation as you're waiting for that ink to refill the feed. So I generally get in a habit of opening up the blind cap before I write it. I didn't do that for this test because I wanted to show you what it was like without opening up the blind cap. Before we sign off, I need to issue a retraction. I called this pen Dawn, and it's really autumn. I should have known better, but I'm reading off a list which has now been corrected, but should have known it. The other one is Sunset, which I get it confused with, which I only have one of those. And then here's the Dawn sitting where it should be, and that's the one that has ink in it. So here's it compared to Sunset. The Sunset is the 480 here at the bottom, and there's the Autumn, which has more red in it, which is what you would expect, red, green, and yellow, and some orange, where the Sunset has a little darkness to it, which is what you would expect with a Sunset. So I think I'm ready to call this video a wrap. Been a little bit rambling. It's hard to really come up with an idea, at least from sometimes, and then put it into video and make it work properly, and I do the best I can. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully you found this video enjoyable. I certainly do enjoy my PenBBS pens, and like I mentioned, I have a few. So may you have many, many great writing experiences. Thoroughly enjoy all the writing instruments that you use. Experiment, explore. Enjoy putting marks on paper or cloth or vellum or your material of choice. Thanks again for watching. We've reached the end of this video. I think it's going to be the end. So we're going to say bye until the next video. Keep writing.